Hi, thank you for joining me. It's Jan O'Hara here, and we're going to speak about labor. This video is about full-term labor, particularly for first-time moms. So we're talking full-term, 37 weeks to 41 weeks, okay? Labor is divided into 3 stages. Stage 1 is when your cervix changes. Stage 2 is pushing, and stage 3 is the delivery of the placenta. You should have a handout just like this poster to follow along with at home. All right, so stage 1, phase 1 is called early labor. So sometime you're healthy, your baby's healthy, and you're full term. Sometime you're just going to go into labor. Early labor kind of starts out slow, and gradually over time it gets more powerful and the contractions get closer together. If you look at this graph, stage 1, phase 1, early labor, it may last 12 hours or more. That's totally normal. And if you look at this lady, it's the easiest phase of all labor. So it's the longest time-wise, but the easiest. So that's very lucky, okay? Here, it defines the contractions as every 5 to 20 minutes, lasting 30 to 60 seconds. So basically, you start out kind of like menstrual cramps, and you'll have cramping about every 20 minutes, lasting about 30 seconds, and that might go on for a few hours, and you're like, I kind of feel like I'm having cramps. But you don't really know if it's going to turn into labor yet, so you're just going to go along with it. And then you might have cramping every 18 minutes for a few hours, then every 16 minutes for a few hours, and gradually over time that cramping will get a little stronger and a little longer and turn into a contraction. And that cramping will get closer together. So let's talk about what is happening in early labor. You see this uterus here with this little baby. Here's a little baby head down. Here's the uterus, and here's the cervix. Remember, the cervix is in the vagina, and it's about a 3-centimeter muscular tube. So over time, that cervix will shorten and then dilate, which means open. So in early labor, basically, your amazing uterus, that muscle that used to weigh 2 ounces that now weighs 2 pounds, that's strong enough to push a human out of a human, that muscle is now changing its own shape in order to give birth to your baby. So during all that little easy cramping over the hours of early labor, it's shortening its muscle fibers here in the cervix, making the cervix get shorter and shorter. That is called effacement. Effacement, if somebody was going to measure effacement, would be measured in percentages. It would be 20% shorter, 50% shorter, 75% shorter, then 100% shorter, and then there would be no length to it left at all, and it would just be just like that, just covering the baby's head with no length to it anymore. So that's effacement. Dilation is when the cervix starts to open, which gradually happens as the baby's head pushes down. So in early labor, your uterus is changing the length of the cervical muscle fibers and gathering all its strength up top. The top of your uterus, remember, is called the uterine fundus. So it's gathering strength at the top so that during labor, it can take all of its power and push down on your baby with each contraction. And as your uterus pushes down on your baby, it helps open your cervix so you can birth your baby. So it's changing its shape. In early labor, the best place for you to be is at home. So if you're at work and you go into early labor, that's a great time to go home. Early labor, you want to conserve your energy. You don't want to use it up too fast because labor is like running a marathon. So you want to pace yourself. You want to conserve your energy in early labor so you have enough energy later for transition and pushing and delivering the placenta. Okay, so pace yourself, take it easy. You'll be at home. You have a handout called the Roadmap to Labor, and that will help you think of ideas on how to work through early labor at home. I will also be making a video about comfort measures, so you'll want to incorporate those comfort measures during early labor. At some point while you're in early labor, you're going to feel like you should talk to a professional. So at any point when you feel like you need to talk to your provider, just give a call to your healthcare office or call the on-call provider and you can discuss what's going on with you. When you call, they will ask lots of questions about your contractions. So be sure to time some contractions for an hour prior to calling if possible. Now, partners and support people, this will be your job to time and record contractions. What you'll want to do is have mom tell you when the contraction starts and when the contraction stops for about an hour. And just write down what time it starts and what time it stops over and over and over. And once you've gathered that data, what you can do is get an approximation of how long each of those contractions are in seconds. Are they averaging about 40 seconds long or 45 seconds long? So you can average the length from the start to the stop. And then you can average how frequently she's having a contraction from the start to the start. Start to start to start is frequency. And remember, in order to access the on-call provider, if it's after hours, you call your doctor's office and follow the instructions on how to contact the on-call provider. Typically, it will give you another number to call for an answering service, and a live person at the answering service will answer and contact the on-call provider for you, and then you will wait for the on-call provider to call you. Okay? If you're not sure when to call your on-call provider, you can always go by the 511 rule. The 511 rule is a contraction every 5 minutes, lasting approximately 1 minute, and that's gone on for an hour or more. If you have reached the 511, then you're in a good, strong labor pattern, and you should let the on-call provider know. Be sure in early labor that you're staying well hydrated and you're consuming nutritious liquids, especially protein shakes, electrolyte drinks, things of that nature. Okay, next we will talk about active labor. Active labor is the second phase of stage 1. So active labor is a little more serious than early labor. It's a shorter phase. During this phase, your cervix will dilate from 6 centimeters to 10 centimeters. So it involves 2 centimeters of dilation. Typically, the contractions are about 2 to 4 minutes apart, lasting about 45 to 60 seconds. During this phase, the mom is a little more serious, but it's very doable. So let's talk about this. If you're having a minute-long contraction every 4 minutes, you're getting a 3-minute break in between. So that 3 minutes is plenty of time to recover from your contraction. Give yourself a little mental pep talk, hydrate a little bit, and prepare for the next contraction. Active labor, if you're planning to birth in a birthing center or the hospital, active labor is the time to go to the hospital. Also, if you're just 100% sure you want an epidural, active labor would be the time to get one. The next phase of stage 1 labor is transition. Transition is the toughest part of all labor, but luckily it's the shortest part. During transition, your cervix will dilate from 8 centimeters to 10 centimeters. This phase, basically the contractions are closer together and the contractions may be a little longer as well. That's why it's harder. Your break in between contractions is a bit shorter. So let's take a peek here. If you were having a 60 to 90 second contraction every 2 to 3 minutes, you might only be getting a 30-second break. The contractions are not anything really different from active labor. They're just a little bit longer and closer together. So your break in between is just a little bit shorter. This is why this phase is considered the most difficult. You see, she has a frowny face because she's not particularly loving transition. The good thing is that because those contractions are long and close together, you'll get fully dilated very quickly. Once you get to 10 centimeters dilated, you have completed stage 1 of labor.